Tender Strands by Martin Dempsey. Chapter 16. Arthur's Dream Journal. June the 12th, listening to Brian Eno. Smoked cannabis prior, no coffee for 12 hours. I dreamt of a circle of young women wearing long white dresses in a summery field. They were all motionless. In the middle of them there was a simple kissing gate, standing on its own without a fence either side. I walked up to them and tried to talk to one of them, but they wouldn't acknowledge me. A red glint caught my eye, and I noticed a red disc amidst the grass at my feet. I reached down and lifted it up. The sunlight shone through it and placed a red dot on one of the women's faces, and she opened her mouth and sung a high-pitched note. One by one, the other women joined in. The gate in the middle of them slowly creaked open, and I woke up. July 30th. Pink Floyd, cannabis edibles, and SSRIs. Yoga session for 120 minutes prior. I dreamt I was on trial. The judge was asleep and snoring heavily. I was acting in my own defense and called witness after witness, a patrolman, an undertaker, a nurse. When I was done, the prosecutor stood up. He wore a tall black stovepipe height. He called a sailor who claimed he was my captain, although I recognized him not, and who said I was a poor worker. He called a priest who claimed he was my priest, although I recognized him not, and who said I was a sinner. And then he called a woman who claimed she was my mother, even though I recognized her not, and she said I was a poor child who had disappointed her. The prosecutor turned triumphantly to the judge, who slept on. In a rage, the prosecutor leapt forth and seized the judge's gavel and slammed it down. The judge startled awake, and so did I. For a good long while, I stared about my room, not knowing if I were awake or still dreaming. August the 5th. Birdsong. 5 H.P. Nutmeg, tannis, yoga session for 120 minutes prior, plus 30 minutes of breathing exercises. I dreamt of a noble court housing a masked ball. All around me, gowned noble women and suited noblemen swirled in a complex waltz. At the head of the court, a king sat slumped in his throne, sleeping. I looked down and noticed that I was still wearing my inmate's uniform and attempted to make myself inconspicuous. As I edged off the dance floor, however, the Grand Vizier, standing at the king's right-hand side, noticed me. He screamed in rage and pointed right at me, and everyone in the ball turned to look at me too. At the same time, all their masks fell off. I don't remember what was underneath. August 10th. Sea sounds, tannis tea, and CBD eligibles. Yoga session for 120 minutes plus 60 minutes breathing exercises in cold water. I dreamt I was in a temple or a chapel. A priest was in a pulpit preaching, and he described a new future in which we are all transformed, and we are all free to live as wild and unfettered beings. As the priest talked, I felt cold water lapping around my ankles. As I looked, I saw that the water was running up from under the pulpit. Soon the water was reaching close to my knees, but I couldn't stand, while the priest's sonorous voice grew louder and louder. The tall, stained glass windows behind the priest cracked, and a torrent of dark, foaming water poured in as the priest screamed, "The dreamer wakes!" I woke to find my own sheets soaked in my own sweat. August 12th. White noise. Tannis route and 5 HTP. Yoga session for 60 minutes plus 60 minutes breathing exercises. 30 minutes in hot water. 30 minutes in cold. I dreamt I was a boy again, and a girl and I visited a house which was built high up in a tree. Inside the house, there was a beautiful woman who cooked something in an oven. She ushered us to sit and opened the oven and withdrew a tray of well-cooked hearts. She placed the tray on the table and told us each to pick one, warning they were still warm. I and the girl both picked up a heart each and started to take small bites from it. With each bite, Flowers started to bloom in the woman's hair. As the blood started to run down my chin, I noticed thorns starting to poke through the woman's skin. As soon as I noticed, I heard the front door slam shut behind me.